we're back on the International Ambulance. We got our parts. Allen and AMI got us hooked up. I looked through my used parts, and all the used levers that I had were rusty and less than fantastic, so I just went ahead and got a new one. It is supposed to go right here. When they removed this originally, they put a plate over here to keep the mice out and what have you, and bolted it down through, so I just took that out. We're all good to go there. It needs to mount this way and then pull it up like this to tension it, and I just have to get some 5/16 bolts. Came with the clamp that holds the cable up inside it. It didn't come with a grommet here, didn't think about that, but I was able to find one in my electrical stuff that fits. So now I just got to get a little dish soap around the inside so that it will slide on this right here. So I'm going to start with that. Let's get this put together. I'm not going to put this all together completely. I just want to get the cable routed down through here. I think it'd be easier to come from the top down and then to the transmission. And then what we're going to do after that's all done is we're going to remove this. This is a source of an air leak. Every time I come near this truck, I can hear air leaking out of this valve. So we're going to remove it. Wherever the air source is, we'll plug that. We'll take all this crap off, get this thing out of here, get it off the frame, and we're back to the way the factory had it. All right, I'm under the truck, and I've got my bracket bolted onto the end of the cable. I have never seized the threads, and then I also never seized inside the fork. Once I put this in, you saw me file this, so it works good. When I'm ready, I'll never seize this pin as well. Never seize, anti-seize, whatever you guys call it. Guys get wound out of shape about that for some reason. I don't understand the world that gets so hung up about things that don't matter, but things that do matter, they just let go. Baffles me. That goes up in here, and you can see right there those 3 bolt holes. One, uh-oh, that didn't work real well. That one there, and then it goes underneath that mount. I know it's hard to see. Hard for me to video this for you. And then it hooks up here on that arm right there. Not a lot of room for me to get in there, let alone have a camera, so I'm just going to go ahead and get this in place, and I'm going to adjust it wherever I think it looks close, where it might work. I'm going to assume there's a lot of wear on them brake shoes, so I'm going to adjust it kind of tight so that when we come up here, we have adjustment in the top of the lever. I'll show you that, but down here I think I'm going to need to adjust it fairly tight, so I'm going to probably go 2/3 of the way up that. I don't want to have to come down here and take it loose, you know, crack the jam nut and spin the thing. So I'm trying to, and I'm sure that's what's going to happen, but I was trying to avoid it if I can. They've added an extra mount on here, and apparently their brake cable wasn't long enough, didn't have enough stroke to pull this, so they moved the bracket for the mount for the parking brake cable. So since they added this other bracket also, you have to shim this out, the factory bracket, and then hopefully it'll work without having to take all their aftermarket crap off. Miserable. Alright, so I changed the location here. It was up here using this bolt and this bolt. So that changes the direction of the cable. You see where we're pulling from right there? So I need to take this back apart and put it this way, because this is gonna stress the cable pulling like this, and it'll just be short-lived. So if we take it back and put it back to these holes, it'll make it more of a straight, direct pull to the arm right there. I know it's hard to see, it's real tight. All right, I got it moved, and now it looks like we're there. All right, there we go. That's much better. Is it all the way up or down?
It is all the way up.
Put it down. Right there. Yep, there we go. There we go. Okay. Now I can get the pin in there and we can try it. But you see how much better of an angle it is on the cable now. Okay, go ahead. Too tight? Okay, back the handle off a little bit. So there's adjustment at the top of the handle, and you just unscrew it until you're where you are comfortable and it locks. It has to come up all the way. I think the brake shoes are worn some. They're not worn out or need replaced, but I think it's enough to hold it. Is it up all the way now?
Yeah.
Okay. And it locked up there, felt positive?
Yeah.
Okay, let it off. Okay, do it again. Okay. Now I need to tighten that jam nut right there. I got a cotter pin in and never seizes on it. So when he needs to adjust this or change his shoes, like if you put new shoes on, you'll have to, adjust this back out. But there's all never sees in there, so it should be easy. Should work out well. Okay, so it's all in. It works like it's supposed to. Really good, positive feeling. I know I struggle with that a good bit, but it's mostly because if you look, there's like no room in here. I have this kind of low to the ground. It's already low, a low profile truck anyways. But changing over from aftermarket crap to back to factory, you got to redo all the crap they do. I thought I was having a rough time with this, and then Justin got a hold of me, and he's having a bad time right now. He could really use your thoughts, that's for sure. He broke his right hand, broke a bunch of bones in here. Just went in for surgery. They put plates and screws. One of the bones was fractured and I guess basically blown apart. They had to put a plate in it, and man, he's really having a rough time. He's going to be out of work now for 3 or 4 months. So poor young guy, he's got a little one, and he says there's no hurry because he's going to be out of work for 3 or 4 months. It's his right hand, of course, and there's nothing he can do but just keep adjusting your thoughts. Okay, now I'm gonna move on to the next part. Okay, we are back to factory equipment. So now we can get outside, out from under it, and start pulling the old line out of the dash. Alright, I just torched off the studs of the old shocks, and when I get ready to put the new shocks in, I take this end to the wire wheel, get all the paint off of it. It makes it much easier to get the nuts on tight. You don't have to get a wrench and hold this, because you see what they do, they kind of weld these on, but the weld gets in the way of getting a wrench on sometimes. So if I clean that up, it makes it much easier. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and change that fuel filter now. And I like to take the bowl and clean it all out real good. Clean the outside. It's important. Everybody says, make sure you clean around here, but I always say it because different filters may have that gasket touching on that mounting surface at a different place, like this one. And if you don't clean it off, it's all dirty. You could suck air through there and have trouble starting, or air in the fuel won't run right, all kinds of drivability problems. So ounce prevention is a pound of cure. I always wipe that off real good where the O-ring of the filter hits the base on every filter. Alright, both the shocks are on, so I'm going to do this fuel filter now. I already did the other side, so I want to get this one changed out. Alright, so I was going to change the coolant filter, and I sampled some of the coolant that was in it. I was able to test it, and it's off the charts. So we're going to drain and flush this and put in the correct coolant that belongs in here. It'll be the red coolant that International suggests for this engine. So that requires draining everything out really well. I use these water troughs you get at Farm and Fleet, Tractor Supply, whatever, because they're flexible rubber, so they're real easy to get in and out of places and bend them around. And you've got to go up against an axle, it'll bend, and you can catch a lot of it like that. It's big. So I'm going to flush it all out, let it drain. I'm going to put the old filter back on. I'll fill it full of water. I'll run it until the thermostat opens. I'll drain it again, and then when I drain it the last time, I'll take a block drain. I'll find somewhere on the block where there's a drain I can take loose and drain that as well. While that's draining, I'm going to go ahead and pull the oil filter, fill up the new oil filter, get it on, drain the oil, and refill the engine so all that can be ready while we're waiting. I like to let that go as long as possible before I shut everything down. Sometimes there'll be another plug on some trucks, like on their oil cooler or something like that. And I don't think a DT has one, but there's a spot, I believe, right down there that's coolant in the block. So it's the lowest, we'll find the lowest point, and that's the one we'll take out and let it drain. With some of these big oil filters, it seems as though the best oil filter wrench I can have is this Nipex. These are 22-inch Cobra water pump pliers, they're called, and they work much better than some of the oil filter wrenches I've got. It gives you lots and lots of leverage. The only problem is sometimes you can't get it in. Like right here, it's gonna be a little difficult because I'm at the bottom where it's most vulnerable. It's better if I can grab it at the top up where the metal ring is, but oh well, we'll do what we can do. Nipex for the win. So there's lots of opinions on whether you should fill your oil filter or not before you put it on. The way I see it is this. I don't want my engine being without any oil, lubricant oil, any longer than it has to be. So to me, I would rather fill it. And guys make a big deal if you fill it from the outside like I'm doing here, because that's how the oil comes in. It's filtered and then it comes back up the center. Or if you just pour the oil down the center of the filter and then it's not filtered. Well, I can't imagine that you're going to get the oil any cleaner than straight out of the jug. So I fill my filters. I fill it like this just because it's convenient. And then I'll let it settle through. Once I'm pretty much full or right at full, then I'll put it on. Again, all my filters get a date marked on them. I always mark them with a date. That way we always know when the last time it was changed. Mileage isn't going to matter for him because he's not going to go that many miles. It'll be more by time. And I do it in two places so that if one happens to wear off, you can still see the other. Let's see if I can reach up into here. Way up in there. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Okay, so now the coolant has stopped. And I don't just drain it and then refill it because you just can't get it all. If you notice here, these are the heater hoses. Well, they tee off and they go back to the ambulance body, and there's valves here. So you got to make sure the valves are open. And as you see, you're probably not going to get that to come up this way. So you either have to go in the back and drain it that way as well, which we'll probably do that too, but we'll fill it back up with water and run it, which will dilute this severely. We'll drain it again, fill it full of water, drain it again. That way we're getting as much of the coolant out as we can, and what isn't out is diluted heavily, because you have coolant in the oil cooler. I don't know if this has a air compressor on here, or is it electric? I didn't pay attention to that. I didn't notice. There it is, air compressor. So the air compressor will have coolant in it as well. So we're trying to get as much out as we can, and what we can't get out we want to dilute because we don't want to mix coolants. Since there's not a lot of room there, I'm just using these small drain pans. They're like 2.5, 3 gallons. So then I just pour it in this 5-gallon bucket and I'll put it in my waste oil tank. So this is what I took out, which apparently is a mix. That's what it seems like. A mix of red and green. So that'll be interesting. That'll be tough to get out. So we need to run this till we're getting up near 195, something like that, where the thermostat opens. Because once the thermostat opens, then the water is actually flowing through the entire engine. And then once it is, then when we drain it, we're getting more of that old nasty stuff out. So here's a better look at what was in the cooling system. You can see just on the edges where the green is. I think this is a mix of green antifreeze and extended life put together, and that's the mess you end up with. So we got to get it out of here. We don't want anything to do with that. While I'm waiting for that to warm up, I'll tell you how I do my fuel systems when I change filters. I fill the filters that can be filled ahead of time and then put them on. Then I come to the fuel tank and I'll find the vent for the tank, and I will apply light shop air pressure to the tank, just a little bit, just enough. And if the cap is vented, I'll take the cap off and I'll put one of them rubber test caps that you can get at Home Depot and Lowe's for plumbing. Put it over there, cinch the hose clamp tight so you know you're holding pressure, and I will pressurize that tank, just real light air pressure, and it'll push fuel through the filters, through the water separator, all the way through the lines, through this filter here. And before I start, I'll crack open a line, usually after the fuel pump, so that once I have a place for the air to escape. So if it's full of air, I gotta have a place for it to go. So you crack that line open, lets all the air out and lets the fuel push through. The other nice thing about doing it like that is when you're pushing with light air pressure, if you have a leak anywhere, it most likely shows up. Because up until this point, when the engine's running normally, everything from here back is suction. This pump is sucking fuel from the tank through both them filters and all the lines. So if there's a leak somewhere, that pump will just suck air instead of fuel, and then you have hard starts or performance issues or running issues, you know, things like that. So when I'm putting light air pressure through, it pushes that fuel. If there's a leak anywhere, it's real easy to take care of right there. Once I have fuel dripping out of here with no air, then I'll tighten that fitting up and I'm ready to start it. Usually within 2 or 3 cranks, you know, crank it over. You know, you still have to work the air out anywhere else in the system. But usually with 2 or 3 tries, it's ready to start, and you don't have to crank it forever. At least that's how I do it. All right, she is up to temperature. So now we're ready to drain her again. We'll probably see what this looks like coming out, and then after that, we'll make a decision. But more than likely, we're gonna have to, you know, do it again. That's what we're looking for. Just good clean water. This is number 4. So it took a little bit longer than I thought, but you know, it is a big coolant system with the ambulance on the back, because it has its own separate heater as well, tied into the engine. All right, so we're filling it back up. I got it running. Now, sometimes I'll use my snap-on vacuum system, where I'll put a vacuum in the cooling system and then suck the coolant in so that you don't get any air pockets. But being though we have the engine warm, we keep going open, close, I'm just filling it up, and we're gonna let the air work its way out as we run it. But I use the peak final charge concentrate. I don't use the 50-50 mix because we are flushing this system. So in the event that I didn't get all the water out of here, I don't want to use 50-50 and then we end up diluting what we put in there. So what I do is I take the capacity of the whole entire cooling system and then add a couple gallons for the heater for the ambulance, take that capacity, split it in half, and I'll put all those gallons of coolant in first. And then after we get all our required coolant, I will add water. I have 4 more gallons here just in case. We're getting up the temperature, we're getting close. Now, then what I'll do is I'll shut the truck down, and this is very time consuming, but I'll shut the truck down, let it cool, see where the level ends up in the expansion tank, and then once I see where that's at, if I need to add, I'll run it again. I got a lot of work to continue on this truck, so letting it idle and do this isn't a big deal. Okay, so I got all my coolant in, I've got water in it. Now we're gonna let it cool, and you know, we'll run this heat cycle a few times, opening and closing the thermostat and work all the air bubbles out. You know, I could have just used the vacuum thing, it works just fine, but this will be all right. I'm not concerned at all. Now, the next thing I need to do is change the filters in the transmission. The problem is the transmission sits so low, I can't get underneath there and get the filters out because they're up inside the pan. So, that being said, I'm just gonna have to wait for the wheels to show up. We dropped them off to get sandblasted and powder coated, and whatever is on there, someone's painted them before, they are having a time getting them off, so they're not ready yet. We have all of our tires here, so once we get those, we'll mount all that, and then I'll raise the front end up and secure it so I feel, you know, comfortable getting underneath it. So one other thing that we needed to look at was Justin said something about the check engine light being on. He wasn't concerned, but his scanner wouldn't tell him what it was, and he's going to take care of it. So I put my scanner on to see what we got, and it came up as a, of course now I have it on data, but it came up as low ICP pressure, low injection control pressure. So it may have a leak in one of the injectors, or a weak high pressure oil pump, or bad O-ring, or something along that line there. So next, I think we're just going to let this cool down, and I think I need to focus my attention to the rear now. Doesn't show up real well on the camera, but it's all red now. That's what we want. Good clean coolant. It'll be good for 2 years now, and then he can, you know, flush it again and change the filter. Okay, so I've tried this 3 times now, and I keep stumbling over my words. We have start this, run it up the temperature, let it cool down completely, back up the temperature, let it cool down several times. And currently, we are almost where we want to be with the coolant. If you look right here when I shake it, the level's right there, so we're almost there. So we're going to let this cool down overnight, and then we'll top it off in the morning, and then of course we'll keep an eye on it, and before we let it go, we'll check it again. But that is all of the mechanicals about done. I can't do the transmission. Well, I can, but I'm not going to do the transmission until I get it back on its wheels. I haven't got the wheels yet to put tires on. However, we're going to end this one right here. We'll pick up next time starting on the rear hitch. We're going to be cutting some stuff off, and starting with some new, adding whatever, you'll see. So stick around. Won't be long, because this ends here, but I'm going to start on that right now. So hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to the next one, and yeah, I'm just having a tough time. You guys know what to do. We'll catch you on the next one. Stick around, guys. Shouldn't be too long for that, because I'm going to start on it here direct.